mind as that which nothing can limit, that which forever transcends any conceivable limitation or determination, unconditioned perfection, often used as a synonym for God. Fillmore defines the word absolute in the Revealing Word as divine mind, unlimited principle, the Almighty One, the all-pervading Spirit, the infinite, the eternal, the supreme being, the one ultimate creative mind, the source of all things, that which is unconditioned, unlimited, unrestricted, and free from all limitations, the self-existed God. Please look on the screen or the front of your program and read this affirmation with me with power.
Pulled by the vision of my life for 2016, I am catapulted by Spirit into a new order of being in which my dreams manifest. I have a more expanded view of myself as Spirit in motion. At each turning point, I am guided by Spirit into achieving one miracle after another. Woohoo! All right, thanks, Marcy. At the end of his sermon, a minister turned to his congregation and he said, "Would all those of you who believe that you are going to paradise, to heaven, please stand." And so essentially the entire congregation stood. And then he said, and those of you who believe that you are going to hell, please stand. And it was kind of quiet for a little while. And then suddenly James Burke stood up. And so the minister was, all by himself. And so the minister was eyeing him and feeling some sadness. And when, the service continued, and at the end he pulled Jack Burke aside and he said, "Jack, what made you fear that you were bound for hell?" And Jack said, "Well, I saw you standing up there all by yourself, and I felt sorry for you." Oh, so the thing is, and I love starting off with. So the thing is about the teachings that we offer here at this center is that we don't teach, we don't focus on where you're going to go later or what's going to happen after we leave the body. Our focus is on creating heavenly states of mind in the here and now. And so in our teaching and in many mystical teachings, this is not just something with new thought. I've also studied many other different mystical teachings as well, and they talk about this concept of it all happens in our own consciousness. States of heaven and states of hell. Hell is when we're in turmoil and conflict, and when we are feeling a lot of distress. And heavenly states are when what was happening when we were singing along with Pat. We were feeling peace, joy, love. We're feeling that expansive nature of who we are in truth. So there's no judgment about it. There is just simply an awareness. And what I love about these teachings is they help to move me more and more easily and effortlessly into breaking out of my momentary stressful thinking and then moving into that state of peace and calm again, that awareness of what the ultimate truth and ultimate reality is. So this month, we're focusing on turning points. And when I left the religion of my upbringing and came to a New Thought Center for the first time, it was a huge turning point because it was a big, big paradigm shift for me. You know, this idea of what ultimate reality is. And so I find great peace in this teaching. I found a lot of fear in the other way that I was brought up. There, you know, I was constantly worried. Is this going to get me am I going to be punished for this and blah, blah, blah. What I love about this teaching, let's look at these. We can call these turning point views. There is a field of infinite possibility that flows through all, surrounds all, and is in all. And that this creative flow of spirit is an eternal goodness and an eternal loving kindness for all of us in all moments. That's turning point number one. So that's the ultimate reality of spirit itself. Then the other one is turning point two. This means that the field of infinite possibilities, that is spirit, this goodness, this love, flows through me, and my thoughts and beliefs mold the creative flow that becomes my world experience. This is a very empowering teaching because we have free will in terms of where we allow our thoughts to go. Yes, thoughts arise. You know, that can feel a little something we can't control, but what we can do is we can turn and pivot our minds in a new direction and begin to start planting seeds of new thinking. Turning point number 3. As I choose to direct my thoughts onto what I want and look for the good, I create more good. So the focus is on creating instead of critiquing or complaining. Okay, again, this is not about sending ourselves on guilt trips. It's about noticing, kind of like a scientist, noticing and going, oh, isn't that interesting? And then turning, pivoting in a new direction back into being conscious of the creative flow of our thought. Turning point number 4. Since I am made in the image of God, my worthiness is inherent. Our worthiness is who we are. We are automatically worthy because of who we are in truth, the spiritual essence of who we are. That means worthy to receive the good in life that we desire. Turning point number 5. Once I surrender into the flow of life with a capital L, which is another word for God, or spirit, handles the details. This is what we learn is after we plant the seeds, the new thought seeds, we let go and we trust that everything's unfolding exactly as it's supposed to be. So one of the things that we're doing this month is experimentation in consciousness. So theories are wonderful because they inspire us. You know, these theories, these spiritual principles that I just shared with you, it's very inspiring. It's another thing to actually practice it. And so when we practice it, it creates advancement in consciousness. Otherwise, we're just tasting. We're tasting, but until we actually have the full feast of this beautiful teaching and really apply it in our lives, we don't get the benefits of it. So I'm inviting you not to just believe these principles, without even testing them out, but to actually prove them to yourself through experimentation. And that's what we do every time we choose a better feeling thought, we look in a new direction, change our thinking, pivot. We are being the ultimate of scientists, right? That's why this teaching has been called religious science. It's actually spiritual science. It's a science of using the mind, noticing, finding out what are the results if I begin to shift in this new direction. So we're running experiments this month, experiments in consciousness. And each experiment then has the opportunity to be a turning point for you, to turn you in an entirely new direction, giving you radical new results in your life that could be looked upon as tipping points. And many of you know that tipping points is a term that's been used on the grander scale of the planet. You know, that when enough people have a vision, this higher vision of heaven on earth, that it shifts the entire planet. It's that tipping point, or that critical mass is another term that's been used for that. So we can do tipping points in our own consciousness as we begin to apply these principles. And the tipping point is always in the direction of what we could call heaven on earth. Greater peace, greater joy, greater love, just like that beautiful song that we started off with this morning. I start my day with love, joy, peace. That's an intention, that's a choice that sends us off in a new direction. And the cool thing is that every moment is a turning point opportunity. Every moment. So as we become greater, more aware of what's going through our minds, we have a greater opportunity to shift it and turn it in the direction that we desire. So when we do pivot, when we do turn in the direction of a better feeling thought, what happens? The first thing that happens is it's like a wrecking ball. I love this concept. A wrecking ball of the old mental construct. Can you see it? The old construct is gone. And what it is then is a surrender into a higher version of our divinity and all of the gifts that come with that. So it's stepping into a greater expression of our divinity, a greater relationship with the all that is, which is really beautiful. And I think of it like the story of the prodigal son, that the moment that we turn to the divine by thinking better feeling thoughts, focusing on spiritual truth, it's as if the open arms of the universe are inviting us to come in and feast, and have a feast, the feast of life itself. We can call that heaven on earth, our greatest good, our highest good, the fulfillment of our calling, whatever it is for you. That's allowing ourselves, but it's about being receptive to that feast. And there are a lot of beautiful techniques of letting go of stress thoughts and of embracing thoughts that cause the relaxation response. We talked about that last week. When we're focused on these thoughts of higher truth that we teach here, it causes the body to relax. What happens when the body relaxes? Anybody?
It's receptive to more good.
Receptive to more good, to the flow of good. So it's opening. It's allowing ourselves to be receptive and allow the flow of infinite possibility to move through us. Ernest Holmes says that if we take time once a day, at least, to let go of what is not true, our doubt, our distrust, our worry, our condemnation, our fear, and lay hold of life and its expressions of beauty, truth, and wholeness, we will be healed. Once a day is what he's saying. Once a day, turning our attention to higher truth and away from the mind chatter that causes distress. And we will be healed. Okay, I was reminded, when I was going through this, I was reminded of a process that I learned recently from Charlie Curtis. He taught it at his workshop when he was here last. And because sometimes it feels like a big leap to leap into joy from when we're in total stress. And so he has a really cool process where you just turn within and you let go, and then you just start journaling, and you list number 1 through 20 on a page, start journaling the thoughts that are there, dumping them onto the paper, one by one, one by one by one. And every time I do that, before I even get to 20, already my mind has self-corrected just by getting that on paper and getting it out of the way. So there are a lot of really good ways to do that. We have spiritual mind treatment, we have meditation, and there are many, many other processes. So I just invite you to explore that one. That's actually a really easy one to do, dumping your negative thoughts on paper, 1 to 20, and watch what happens. So let's check out and see who did experiment number 2 this last week. And so, by a raise of hands, you were supposed to prove the power of intention and attention by looking for 8 things in 72 hours. So how many of you saw a belly laugh? Raise your hands. Okay. A toy from your childhood. Okay. Your favorite high school song. The number 222. All right. A beach ball. Okay. A senior citizen in a fashionable hat. A smile from a baby. Yeah. A billboard with a message just for you. I saw a lot of hands go up. That's very cool. I really appreciate those of you who are doing your experiments. It's awesome. Okay. So we have a new experiment today. And it's in your program, by the way. There are 2 experiments. There's experiment 3 and experiment 4. So we're looking at experiment 3 right now. But I want to, so it's really to prove turning point number 5, that we are worthy. But I want to start by talking about this concept of absolute that Marcy introduced us. And absolute with a capital A stands for what? God. It's just another name for God or Spirit. And then there's this other absolute with a lowercase a. That's when we are absolutely sure that a certain fact about our life is true. And it's a fact that we call it a fact that when we look at the field of when we look in the quantum field of infinite possibilities, any possibility is available at all times. That's the thing that is mind-blowing to us. So what's happened is, because of telling our same story about who we are over and over and over again to ourselves and to other people, we begin to think that reality that we're living, or this reality, is the absolute with a small a. We might think it's absolute with a capital A, but thinking it's absolute with a small a. So how do we get beyond that? Is first of all to realize what we're dealing with here. We are spirit beings of unlimited potential, living in and having this field of pure potentiality moving through us at all times. We can choose new possible ways of being. So here are some of the things that Pam Grout listed that were examples of the lowercase absolute. She said, you may be absolutely sure that you are not photogenic, too old to find love, too old to find a good job. You may be absolutely sure that you don't make enough money, that you could never leave your loveless relationship. So these are absolutes that we put on ourselves that are just one potential possibility for our lives. And notice it's in the world of the relative. It's the way in which things show up in manifestation, which is different from the absolute, which is the unmanifest. So this, with a lowercase a, it's about the relative, what shows up in expression. Albert Villoldo, a psychologist and shaman, said, "When we drop our dreary story, we are provided for in every way." When we drop our dreary story, we are provided for in every way. Why? Because we finally let go of the story that is keeping us imprisoned. It's a mental construct that's keeping us imprisoned. Our dreary stories are no more true than their opposites. When doing some experimentation with this over the years, one of the times I remembered experimenting with this when I was working with Martha Creek on the Byron Katie work, and we looked at, some of the thoughts that I had, and is the opposite of it as true as this? And it's like, yeah, it's just what I choose to place my focus on. Where am I going to focus? Am I going to focus on what causes me upset and stress, or I'm going to focus on what lifts me and empowers me and builds a sense of faith and trust in the universe? So I'm just thinking to myself, something I can share personally about this, and with many of you I've shared this, but going back over it, I think about the period of time when I was chronically ill for a really, really long time. It was like a 25 to 30 years. It was a long span of time. And when I got into this teaching and I heard about the way the creative mind works and the field of potential that flows through us and that we mold it with our thoughts, I began to entertain the possibility of being healed and not requiring any medication. And I stuck to it, for a period of time. I can't even remember. I think I did look back at one point in time, and it was like 1999 or something, 2000, when I was taking a class. I found it in one of my class notes that it's like, oh, I haven't had take any medication for 3 months now or whatever. So it was somewhere around that time period, and I've experienced it with pain in my body, getting shifts around that. Sometimes it just meant that I needed to think differently or speak up, or there were a lot of different things where pain was there and then it was gone. So I've proven to myself over and over again with my physicality the way in which this field of potential works. I know there have been times when I felt like, there might be something coming on with a cold or whatever, and I made the shift, I made the conscious choice, and it just dissolved, it disappeared. Radical forgiveness, doing radical forgiveness worksheets, and having a shift and a change of belief, and then noticing how things improve in my relationships with others. So this beautiful gift of this teaching really helps us to truly take the wrecking ball to those mental constructs that imprison us over and over and over again. So I'd like to share with you a beautiful story. This is a true story. In fact, this woman is, Dan looked her up on the internet and gave me some more information about her. She's now a spiritual teacher, minister. But back in the 1970s, she was working as an RN in one of the first pediatric intensive care units in the nation. Her name was Michelle Longo O'Donnell. So when she was working there, she had a 2-year-old at the time that this begins, and she was pregnant with her second child. And because of the fact that she herself, when she was younger, had to have one of her kidneys removed, they were concerned, the doctors were concerned, as to whether her one sole kidney could handle the full-term birth of the child. So what they did is they decided to induce labor. But there was a miscalculation. They miscalculated. they thought that the baby was farther along than she was. And it turned out that she was 2 months early, 2.5 pounds. She was not able to fill her own lungs with oxygen, so they had to put her immediately on a respirator. And that first night, this little being had 5 cardiac arrests. And in addition to that, even with all the oxygen, 100% oxygen they were pumping into this baby, they could see signs the baby was not getting enough oxygen in the brain or in the kidneys. And so the doctor came to Michelle and said, I don't think there's anything else we can do. I think we need to take her off life support. I don't think she's going to survive. And the mother turned within and she listened. And she heard very clearly within. She felt that this new baby was going to be all right. The baby was named Laura, Lara. The baby was going to be all right. And so she did not give permission. She said, no, my daughter's going to be all right. I just know it. So here she is. She's bumping up against a paradigm or mental construct of the medical community that says this child is not going to survive. In fact, if she does survive with all of the oxygen deprivation, she's probably going to have mental retardation. So talk about a leap of faith to follow that inner guidance. So for the next 2 years, in fact, 2 days after she made this decision, her husband left her. He was gone. He left. So she was on her own, raising this little child. The child was finally taken out of the hospital. And then 2 years later, let's fast forward 2 years later, Michelle is holding Laura on her hip and ready to feed her a cracker. And up until that point, this little girl basically functioned like a vegetable. She really didn't respond. She didn't smile. She didn't try to take the cracker or anything like that. Well, this particular time, she smiled back at her mother. She reached up and she took the cracker, put it in her mouth, and from that point on, there was constant improvement. This little girl grew up to become a lawyer that worked for the Attorney General of the state of Texas. And this mother, Michelle, went on to write quite a few books in spirituality. All because she decided to entertain a new possibility, to not go along with the mental constructs of a big community, the medical community, who did all their experimentation, and there was a lot of evidence and so on. And she had to overlook the evidence of the way her daughter was showing up those first 2 years and continue to have faith in the midst of it. Think of that. That's what it takes, folks, for us to continue to focus on the new possibility and to continue to move forward. So to me, it's dramatic stories like this that inspire me and remind me to stay true to my course, to keep on keeping on, no matter what. Perseverance. Yes, thank you, Dwayne. So, what have you decided is an absolute with the small a, lowercase a, that limits you? What is the absolute fact that you've told yourself limits you? What is it? This is for you to look at. And when you find out what it is, and here's some examples. I've never been great at relationships. I sometimes suffer from depression. I have trouble sleeping. I hate to exercise. I've never been organized. I'm not good at follow through. I'm not good enough. I'll never make anything of myself. Cancel, 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 cancel. That's what we do in this teaching, by the way. Cancel the thought. So whatever that absolute small a, fact is, that limits you, are you willing to entertain a new possibility? The opposite of it, in fact. Are you willing? Well, that's what experiment number 3 is all about. It's about rewriting your life story by entertaining and looking for the opposite. And Grout says, pick an identity that you've worn like your favorite pair of jeans. I love it. So again, nothing is absolute, lowercase a. Only thinking makes it so. Only thinking makes it so. So, that's for you to, I know this might not be the time. You might have something that's come to your mind right away that you'd like to experiment with, but I'm going to give you some, take some time. Give yourself this gift of experimenting new possibilities and notice what happens. So, experiment number 4, let's take a look at that one. So this one is to prove turning point view number 1, that there really is an invisible energy, force, or field of infinite possibilities that flows through us, that surrounds us, that infuses all that is, and that it is wanting to express through us as greater life. In Revelations chapter 3, verse 20, it says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person, and they with me. When we look at these beautiful teachings in the Bible and in other ancient texts, we understand that the culture that put these beautiful things together spoke in symbology and in ways of helping us to understand states of consciousness. This is a state of consciousness of receptivity that we're talking about here. The spirit, the all that is, that greater good, that divine presence stands at the door and knocks symbolically. And all we need to do is listen and open our hearts and receive. So that's what this next one, number 4, is all about. Let's take a look at number 4, experiment 4. So there's the theory. The question is, if there really is an invisible energy, force, or field of infinite possibilities surrounding and infusing all that is, why am I so often unaware of it? Is it possible that I can hook into it? And the hypothesis, if I release the resistance to that which is trying to come forth through me, I will get a glimpse, a sampling of what life really is. The required day, again, is 3 days. So after you do the 3rd experiment, start Thursday, Friday, Saturday on this one. You put your day down, and then, and so the approach is this. Okay, universe, this is your moment of glory. I expect to be shown a glimpse of my connection to you, complete with awe and magnitude. I've heard that once it comes, there's no mistaking it. For the next 72 hours, I'm going to be consciously receptive, listening and trusting that I can catch a glimpse of the wonder and glory of the field of infinite possibilities surrounding and infusing all that is. So that's something for you to say to yourself once you've done that. And then, there's a place to record how you feel at the beginning, in 3 days, and then your notes. One of the things that I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed this about yourself, and it has to do with dreams and everything else. Sometimes if we don't write them down right away, it's gone. So that's the beauty of keeping a record of when you have the experiences of the infinite, having the experiences of these various shifts in consciousness. And then what does that do? If you keep a record of it, what does it do?
It reinforces it.
Yeah, it builds faith. You get to the point of knowing that this is the truth instead of thinking, well, maybe it's the truth. We begin to know it and then live it more skillfully. So, my friends, we have our 2 experiments, and remembering that each moment is a turning point moment. We can choose whether to go this way listening to maybe a stressful thought, or choosing a better feeling thought, following our experiment. These are all experiments in consciousness, and noticing what happens. And what I know to be true, because I continue to live this. And you know, there are always these little times of challenge for me. You know, it's not like I have it totally down all the time. But what I know is when I continue to return to higher truth over and over again, that I'm able to just keep moving forward. And my life is just so much better than it was years ago. How many of you have noticed that, who've been in the teaching for a while? How many of you have noticed that your life is better than it used to be? Okay, beautiful. It's about applying it. That's the key. All right, so I'm just going to invite in this moment the practitioners and ministers and practitioners in training to circle the room with prayer. If you would do that now, I really appreciate it. Kimberly, you're welcome to get up too if you'd like. She's had the full certification, I mean. All right, so let's turn within. And what we're doing is we're knowing the truth about each and every person in this room and about their potentiality and possibility and the power that they have within them. So does that give you a good start? Well, let's begin. So I know right here and right now, it is God that flows in me, through me, as me, that is a life that completely and totally infuses all that is. And in this moment, I open my heart and my entire being to the powerful flow of this creative presence, capturing as I go along the ideas in the mind of God about each and every beautiful total faith and total trust. So I release this word into the universal law of mind, knowing that it's done. I can feel it. I let go, I let God. And so it is. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Namaste.